Hey guys, in today's video I'm going to show you how I made this opportunity and constraints diagram for my 4th year project. If you don't know what an opportunity and constraints diagram is, it's essentially what it says on the tin. You can use this type of diagram when doing a site analysis to show various things, which I'll explain soon, but mainly the access points in and around the site as well as potential factors that can affect your design. So the first thing you want to do is import a simple sitemap. I have a blog post on how to do this with Digimap linked in the description, and you want to clean up the map so that all you're left with are the building outlines and road names. You really don't want much more than that, otherwise you risk the diagram getting pretty cluttered and unreadable. So the first thing you want to highlight, of course, is your site. Now, before I do that, I just want to clean up the map a little bit and clip it with the shape that you see here. So I'm just going to highlight both of these shapes, right click and click on Make Clipping Mask. You have to make sure that the shape is on top of the site plan. Now we're going to do the site outline. So to do your site outline, you can use the pen tool to just trace around the site like I'm doing here. It doesn't have to be perfect, but this is something that you would typically do in practice as well, to just highlight your site, make sure it's very clear and readable. And then once I've done this, I'm gonna change the stroke color to red, as you typically do in actual architectural drawings. And then I'm going to change the stroke type to dashed so that it's not too heavy on the eyes and it can kind of denote the fact that you're still working on the site. And then I'm just going to duplicate the shape, switch it to a red fill, and then lower the opacity down to maybe 20%, or I think actually 10 is better. So now that we've got a good start, the next thing I'm going to do is drop in my 3D export from SketchUp. So the way I've done this is by downloading the building heights file from Digimap for this specific site. And then you go to plan view and change the camera to perspective. So then you can basically play with the field of depth so that all the buildings pop up on the sides, but you have to keep your site in the middle because this makes it a lot more centrically focused. And then I export the 3D view as a PDF file so that later I'm able to fill it with color and adjust line weights and use it as a vector rather than an image. Make sure you also save that specific scene in SketchUp so that you can play around with shadows and then export those on their own as a PNG file, and then they will always match. You basically can do this by hiding all the edges so that the only visible thing is the shadow. So with this layer, I've adjusted the stroke to be slightly heavier than the site plan, and then we can turn this into a live object to paint it. You want to go to the side toolbar, click on Live Paint Tool, and click Make. I've highlighted some of these buildings in different colors because they each have different meanings. So the light purple ones are significant high street shops, whereas the dark gray ones are public buildings like churches and things. So for the sake of this tutorial, I'll color in this building on the side in purple. All you have to do is click once to fill the shape. You can click and drag to fill multiple shapes around it. What I'm going to do as well is color in the building on our site in a different color. So I'll just select a brighter kind of purpley color and then color in this church, which is on our site, to basically just differentiate it from the rest. And this is a really simple way to have a slight variation in your diagram and actually make it mean something. Obviously, it's good if you have a graphic style or a color palette for your portfolio so that you can match those and stick to those. Then I've just added my shadow layer here, and if you've not really rescaled the buildings layer that much, then they should match from your SketchUp export. And then all you need to do is go into the Appearance tab and change the blending mode to multiply. I like doing these diagrams in Illustrator because they turn out a lot cleaner and crisper than if you did them on Photoshop, and if you work in a non-destructive way, then you're easily able to switch layers on and off and adjust them however you need. The next thing I've included is a sun path, and this is really easy to do. If you want to see the full tutorial, you can check out my sun path diagram video on my channel. I basically carved out this crescent shape, added an arrow and sun icon to show when and where these shadows are occurring, which again you should be able to get from SketchUp when exporting your shadows, so this is another thing to note. And then you can basically add some text by using the text type on a path tool. So these again denote the angle or the kind of orientation, whether it's south or east or west, whatever it is. And then I've also added a very kind of like long arrow to show how it's affecting the site as a whole. The next layer is going to be transport. Usually you want to understand the transport links around your site to answer questions like, is it easy to get to? Will people be able to park their cars or use public transport? or even walk to your building, and how can you accommodate for an increase in footfall. For this, you can really simply kind of add in bus stops like I've done here with this icon. I've also added some arrows. Let me just make this a little bit brighter so that it's kind of more obvious that there are different entry points to this site. Because it is a triangle, there are different sides to it. You can also go in and select shapes with similar colors by going to select, similar, and then fill color, and then changing them as a whole rather than doing each one individually. To highlight roads, you can really simply just kind of make or draw a shape along the path of the road and then lower the opacity to 50%. Then basically this can highlight kind of the main roads or main access points again around your site. So these are two of the main roads that are around the site. So again, using that pen tool to simply like draw out a little shape, finish it off, and then lower the opacity to 50%. You can play with this depending on your graphic style or preference, or if there's anything specific that you want to show, if there's a journey, or if there are overlapping points, if there's a bus route going through the city or anything like that. Just make sure you kind of like highlight this in your key later on. And then for the rest of the buildings, I could go in and live paint the residential houses in another color, but instead I've kind of just decided to add these blob shapes with a gradient to represent the residential areas around the site as well. If your site has more of these, you may want to represent this in another way, and of course it depends on your site too. So if there are other groups of spaces like parks or roads, then you can add another marker for them on a different layer. So I've simply like added a gradient style so that it's not so harsh. And then the last thing I've done is added a key. So I've taken elements of each layer, some are icons, some are just the colors, and represented them very small in the corner into this key neatly tucked away. So that's how we make an opportunity and constraints diagram. I hope this video was helpful in understanding why we make these diagrams and how you can do one for your portfolio too. If you do have any questions, just comment them below, and if you use this tutorial, please do give it a like. It means a lot. I'll see you guys in my next video. Thanks for watching.